My hands clenched the armrests, my nails digging into the cold leather. I took a deep breath, trying to stay calm as I looked across the courtroom. There, Derek, the man who once vowed to protect me forever, stood before the judge. He wore a perfectly fitted gray suit, his hair slicked back neatly, his expression calm, as if this were just another ordinary presentation. "Your Honor, I am genuinely concerned for my daughter's safety while she is with Naomi," his voice echoed, each word enunciated as if rehearsed 100 times. "She is unstable. She frequently loses control and causes distress to my daughter. I only want to ensure that Alice lives in a safe and stable environment." Each word felt like a knife slicing through my heart. My lips were dry, my mind spinning. Alice, my 7-year-old daughter, sat behind me, her tiny hand tightly clutching her grandmother's. Her clear brown eyes met mine, filled with worry. I wanted to scream. I wanted to stand up and refute every one of Derek's lies, but my throat closed up, trapping my words inside. Judge Simmons, a stern-faced woman with sharp, piercing eyes, turned to me. "Ms. Naomi, do you have anything to say?" I tried to speak, but only a weak, shaky breath escaped. No words could convey the pain I was feeling. Beside me, Michael, my attorney, glanced at me, his eyes full of concern. "Derek," Judge Simmons turned to him, her gaze stern. "Do you have any evidence to support these claims?" Derek smirked slightly. "Yes, Your Honor, I do. I have text messages and emails from Naomi where she admits she is struggling mentally. She sent multiple messages in the middle of the night, crying and saying she couldn't control her emotions." I bit down on my lip so hard I tasted blood. "Those messages?" Yes, I had sent them. But that was when I had just lost my job, the rent was overdue and Alice was sick. I was in a state of crisis. But that didn't make me an unfit mother. Judge Simmons looked at me, her eyes assessing. "Miss Naomi, do you have anything to say about these messages?" I swallowed hard, forcing myself to speak. "Your Honor," my voice trembled, "those messages were sent during a difficult period. I don't deny that I was struggling, but I sought help. I am in therapy and have been recovering. I love my daughter and I always prioritize Alice's safety." Derek suddenly let out a cold, condescending laugh. "Oh yes, she loves her daughter so much that she sends countless messages at midnight, crying and threatening to hurt herself. Is that the stability she's referring to?" All eyes turned to me. I felt like everyone was staring at me as if I were a madwoman. The air in the room grew stifling, as if it had been sucked dry. "That's not true," I whispered, but my voice was weak and ineffective. Judge Simmons sighed and leaned back in her chair. "I need to review more evidence before making a final decision." I lowered my head, my eyes tightly shut. Derek smiled, a smug, victorious grin as if he had already won. Alice still sat behind me, her wide eyes staring at me. I knew she was scared, but I had no idea how to comfort her. In that moment, I felt utterly powerless, trapped in the perfect act Derek had orchestrated. The fluorescent lights overhead cast a cold, unforgiving glow. I sat there, dazed, my hands still clutching the armrests, as if letting go would send me plunging into the abyss. Derek stood just a few feet away, but he felt like he was in another world, a world of liars and manipulators. Judge Simmons scribbled something in the thick file in front of her. The air in the courtroom was heavy, the silence deafening. Every eye in the room was fixed on her. "Naomi?" Judge Simmons finally spoke, her voice calm yet commanding. "In this case, I must carefully consider the best interests of the child. I will—" "Your Honor." A small voice rang out from behind me. I froze. "Alice?" I turned sharply, eyes wide with shock. Alice had risen to her feet, her tiny hands still clutching her grandmother's. Step by step she walked forward, her gaze unwavering yet slightly trembling. "Your Honor," Alice said, her voice small but clear, "I have something to show you." The courtroom erupted in whispers. Derek's smug expression began to falter. "Alice, go back to your seat." But Alice didn't stop. She took a few more steps, standing directly in front of Judge Simmons. In her hands was a pink tablet, the one I had given her for her 7th birthday. "Alice, what are you doing?" I whispered, my voice cracking. Judge Simmons leaned forward, her stern expression softening. What do you want to show me, sweetie? Alice took a deep breath, then held up the tablet. I have a video. A video from Dad's phone. My heart seized. Everyone in the courtroom turned to look at Derek. He stood frozen, his face draining of color, eyes widening with rage. No, Alice, you can't. Derek's voice rose, but Judge Simmons raised a hand, silencing him. Alice, the judge said gently but firmly. Can you tell me what this video is about? Alice swallowed, her small voice trembling but resolute. Last weekend, Dad thought I was asleep, but I wasn't. I heard him talking on the phone and I got scared. I saw him leave his phone on the table and I recorded what he said. The room fell dead silent. Judge Simmons nodded, signaling for a court officer to step forward. May I see the video, Alice? Alice handed over the tablet. The officer quickly passed it to Judge Simmons. She held it up, her eyes fixed on the screen. The entire courtroom seemed to hold its breath. I swallowed hard, fighting back tears. Derek stood there, his fists clenched, his eyes glaring at me like a trapped animal. Seconds ticked by, and then the audio played. She thinks she's the mother? She's not the mother. I'm the one who decides everything. I will do whatever it takes to get her out of my daughter's life. Derek's voice echoed, filled with venom. A soft sob escaped me. My whole body trembled. Derek's voice continued to boom through the speakers, each word cutting through me like a blade. She thinks she can win. She's nothing. If that little brat opens her mouth, I'll make sure Naomi regrets it for the rest of her life. Judge Simmons stopped the video, her face a mask of stone-cold fury. She turned to Derek, her eyes like ice. Mr. Derek, do you have any explanation for this? Derek's mouth opened and closed, but no words came out. He glanced at me, his eyes burning with rage. Alice stood there, her small body shaking, but her eyes never wavered. She didn't cry. She just looked at me, her gaze filled with a strength I had never seen before. Judge Simmons took a deep breath, then turned to Alice. Thank you for being so brave and telling the truth. You may return to your seat now. Alice nodded and turned away. As she walked past me, I couldn't hold back any longer. I bent down and wrapped her in a tight hug, feeling her heart pounding against my chest. You did so well, I whispered into Alice's ear. I just wanted you to know that I believe you, Alice said softly, her brown eyes shining under the fluorescent lights. In that moment, I knew that my daughter had bravely stood up for the truth. The courtroom fell into a deafening silence. All eyes were on Judge Simmons, who sat upright in her chair, eyes fixed on the tablet screen. Her expression remained stern, but her hands gripped the armrests as though she, too, was struggling to keep her composure. Derek stood next to his lawyer, his face tense, eyes blazing with fury but unable to mask the underlying panic. He swallowed hard, his hands trembling slightly. Judge Simmons paused the video. She closed her eyes, took a deep breath, and then slowly turned to Derek. Mr. Derek, do you have anything to say about this video? Derek forced a strained smile. Your Honor, that video was completely edited. I was only trying to discipline my daughter. Alice misunderstood and... Misunderstood? Judge Simmons cut him off, her voice as cold as ice. Are you suggesting that Alice misunderstood you, threatening that she would end up in a foster home if she dared to tell the truth about you? Derek opened his mouth to speak, but couldn't find the words. His lawyer leaned in, whispering something in his ear. Derek closed his eyes, took a deep breath, and continued. Your Honor, I was just trying to correct my daughter. She wasn't listening, and I had to teach her so she wouldn't be negatively influenced by her mother. Her mother. The word pierced through me like a knife. Derek had always blamed me for everything wrong in his life. Judge Simmons didn't respond immediately. She turned to the court officer. Please play the video again. Tension in the room was palpable, as though everyone had stopped breathing. The video played again. Derek's angry voice echoed through the room, each word sharp and cutting. She thinks she's the mother? She's not the mother. I'm the one who decides everything. I will do whatever it takes to get her out of my daughter's life. I clenched my fists, my nails digging into my palms. Beside me, Alice curled up, her brown eyes filled with tears. The video ended. Judge Simmons closed her eyes for a moment, then opened them, her gaze steely and resolute. "Mr. Derek," she said, each word as firm as a hammer striking a nail. "This video is undeniable evidence of your psychological abuse toward Alice. This is not how a responsible father treats his child." Derek's mouth fell open. "Your Honor, I was just trying to teach her. I didn't—" "That's enough," Judge Simmons's voice boomed like thunder. "You've had ample opportunity to explain yourself, and this video says it all." Derek held his breath. His lawyer stared down at the floor, unable to meet anyone's eyes. "I am temporarily granting custody of Alice to Miss Naomi," Judge Simmons declared. "Mr. Derek will only be permitted supervised visitation at the Child Protective Center. The schedule and frequency of visits will be determined after Mr. Derek completes a psychological treatment program and a child welfare evaluation. Do you understand this ruling?" Derek's face turned from red to ashen. He opened his mouth, but no words came out. "I am ordering you to leave the courtroom immediately," Judge Simmons said, her voice sharp as a blade. "Security, please escort Mr. Derek out." Two security officers stepped forward, each gripping one of Derek's arms. He struggled, his eyes burning with hatred as he looked at me. "Naomi, you'll regret this. I won't let this go." I met his gaze, unblinking. "There's nothing left to regret, Derek." Derek was dragged out, his shouts echoing even after the doors slammed shut. The room fell into an eerie silence. I turned to Alice. She still sat there, her small hands clutching her grandmother's, her pale face tense, but her eyes unwavering. I bent down and wrapped her in my arms. "You were so brave, Alice. I'm so proud of you." Alice buried her face in my shoulder, her small voice trembling. "I just didn't want you to get hurt anymore. I was scared." I stroked her soft hair, my eyes drifting to the door where Derek had just been pulled through. "You don't have to be scared anymore, Alice. I will always be here to protect you. Everything will change from now on." But even as I said it, I knew that while Derek had been temporarily removed from our lives, the storm was far from over. And I couldn't predict what he would do next. But this time, I wouldn't let him win. The weak afternoon sunlight filtered through the window, casting shadows on the faded floral carpet in my mother's living room. I sat on the couch, eyes staring blankly into space. Alice sat on the floor, legs crossed, a red crayon in her hand as she drew on a blank sheet of paper. Alice's grandmother, my mother, was in the kitchen, the rhythmic chopping of vegetables the only sound keeping me grounded. She hadn't said much since we got back from the courthouse. I knew she was trying to keep everything normal so Alice wouldn't feel unsettled. But nothing felt normal anymore. Alice hadn't spoken much since we left the courtroom. She just kept her head down, her eyes focused on the drawings she was making. Each time I tried to get closer, she would quickly hide the paper and look at me with worried eyes, as though afraid I might ask her about the video. "Alice, what are you drawing?" I asked gently, trying not to startle her. Alice looked up, her brown eyes blinking a few times before looking down at her drawing. "I'm just drawing what I remember." I bent down and looked at the paper. The drawing was of a man standing in front of a closed door. The man, I recognized instantly, was Derek. And the door was the courtroom door from that day. "Is Daddy angry?" I asked, my voice quivering. Alice nodded but said nothing. She continued coloring Derek's face in red, pressing the crayon hard against the paper as if emphasizing the anger she had seen. I took a deep breath, feeling the air grow heavier around me. While I was lost in thought, my mother stepped out of the kitchen, carrying a bowl of steaming soup. "Alice, sweetie, come eat something. You've been sitting there all afternoon." Alice put down the crayon, stood up and walked to the table. I sat down next to her, forcing a smile, but it felt too forced, too strained. "Alice," I said softly, my voice gentle, "do you want to talk about what happened today?" Alice stared down at the soup, her tiny hands stirring it slowly. "Would you hate me if I told the truth?" The question hit me like a knife to the heart. I reached out and held her hand, feeling the slight tremor in her fingertips. Never, never, Alice. You did the right thing. You were so brave. I'm so proud of you. Alice looked at me, her brown eyes glistening with unshed tears. But Daddy said I shouldn't tell. He said if I told you would get in trouble and I would have to live far away from you. I swallowed hard, my throat tight. Daddy lied. I will never leave you, Alice. Never. Alice didn't respond. She just lowered her head, continuing to stir the soup without taking a single bite. My mother sighed, her eyes filled with sadness. Naomi, you need to do something to help her get through this. She's only 7 years old. She shouldn't have to endure such terrible things. I nodded, but inside, I felt empty. What had I done to help Alice besides sitting here and watching her withdraw further and further? That night, after Alice had gone to bed, I walked into the living room. The floor was still scattered with the unfinished drawings she had made. I picked up each sheet, my eyes fixed on the crude childlike lines. In one drawing, Alice had sketched me crying, standing in front of a closed door. On the other side of the door was Derek, holding a phone, his face red like a monster. In another drawing, Alice had drawn 2 hands holding a broken heart. Each drawing was a story, each line was a word left unsaid. I folded the papers carefully and placed them in a sturdy cardboard box. Then I sat down and reached for the glass jar that Alice and I used to call the truth jar. The truth jar was once where we would write down difficult questions and read them together every night, but it had been a long time since we last opened it. I unscrewed the lid. Inside were old scraps of paper. I pulled one out and read, "Mommy, why did Daddy yell like that?" I sighed and folded the paper back up. Alice's questions were still there, but now I knew it was time to give her a new space to express what she couldn't say out loud. The next morning, I bought Alice a new notebook. I placed it on her bed along with a blue pen, her favorite color. "Alice," I said, sitting beside her on the bed and gently stroking her hair, "I think we should start using the truth jar again, but this time, instead of writing down questions, you can draw, write, or do whatever you want. This is your notebook. It's a place where you can say all the things you can't say out loud." Alice looked up at me, her eyes wide. "But what if I write down the things I'm scared of? Will you be mad at me?" I leaned down and kissed her forehead. "No. I will always listen. And I will always be here, right beside you." Alice hugged the notebook to her chest, holding it as if it were the only thing that could protect her. The courtroom was much more crowded this time than during the previous hearings. I sat on the cold wooden bench, my hands clasped tightly together, my palms damp with sweat. My mother sat beside me, her eyes never leaving Alice, who was sitting just a few steps away. She wore a pale blue dress with white daisies. The dress I had picked out for this final hearing. Alice wasn't looking at me. She was holding the blue notebook, the one I had given her to write down the things she couldn't say. But today she wasn't writing. She was just gripping it tightly, as though it were the only thing keeping her grounded in this room filled with scrutinizing eyes. The courtroom doors swung open. Derek walked in, still dressed in his sharp gray suit. But the confident expression was gone. His eyes were bloodshot, dark circles visible under the harsh lights. He sat down across from me, his cold gaze sweeping over me like a blade. Derek's lawyer leaned in and whispered something to him, but Derek only nodded absently. I could tell he was trying to appear calm, but his clenched hands gripping the armrests betrayed him. Judge Simmons entered the room, walking straight to her seat, her face expressionless. "All rise," the bailiff announced. Everyone stood and then sat when Judge Simmons signaled. She opened a thick file on her desk, her eyes scanning the pages. The room was so quiet that I could hear my own rapid breathing. "In the custody dispute between Naomi Collins and Derek Hale," Judge Simmons began, her voice steady and sharp. "After reviewing all evidence, including the video documenting Mr. Hale's emotional abuse toward Alice Hale, I have reached my final decision." I held my breath, my hands squeezing together so tightly they ached. "First," Judge Simmons said, "full legal custody will be awarded to Ms. Naomi Collins. Ms. Collins will have full responsibility for the upbringing, education, and health of Alice Hale. All decisions regarding the child will be made solely by Ms. Collins without the need for Mr. Hale's consent." Everything around me blurred. My eyes stung with tears, but I forced myself not to cry. Not yet. Judge Simmons paused, her eyes shifting to Derek. Second, Mr. Derek Hale will only be permitted supervised visitation at the Child Protective Center. Visitations will be twice a month, no longer than 2 hours each time. Any other form of contact must be approved by Ms. Naomi Collins and the Child Protective Center. Derek shot up from his seat. This is outrageous. Alice is my daughter. I have a right to see her without being monitored. Judge Simmons didn't flinch. Mr. Hale, I have thoroughly reviewed the video as well as the reports from the Child Counseling Center. Your threats were not only emotionally abusive but could have lasting effects on Alice's well-being. My decision is final. Derek clenched his jaw, his eyes blazing with fury. Naomi, you may have won, but don't think this is over. I won't let this go. I didn't respond. I just bowed my head and closed my eyes, taking a deep, shaky breath. Judge Simmons slammed the gavel down. Court is adjourned. Everyone stood up, shuffling toward the exits. I remained seated, staring straight ahead, feeling as though I had just woken up from a nightmare. My mother walked over and placed a hand on my shoulder. Naomi, you did it. I turned to look at Alice. She was still sitting there, her eyes vacant. I walked over and knelt in front of her. Alice, we can go home now. You don't have to be afraid anymore. Alice didn't respond. She just opened the blue notebook and pulled out a small, folded piece of paper. I frowned, unfolding it. The shaky hand. Am I a bad person for making Daddy not see me anymore? My heart stopped. I sat down on the floor, pulling Alice into my arms, feeling her small body tremble against mine. No, Alice, you are not a bad person. You told the truth, and the truth is never wrong. Alice wrapped her arms around me, pressing her face into my chest. But I don't want Daddy to hate me. I closed my eyes, tears streaming down my face. Daddy doesn't hate you. He just doesn't know how to love you the right way. But you are not responsible for his mistakes. Outside, Derek was still there, glaring at us with eyes full of hatred. I had no idea what he was thinking, but I knew one thing: this battle wasn't over. The days after the final hearing, my small apartment became eerily quiet. There were no more harassing calls from Derek, no more threats echoing through the night. But this silence was not peace. It felt more like the calm before a storm. Alice hardly spoke. She spent most of her time in her room, sitting by the window and staring outside. I could see her holding the blue notebook I had given her. Her tiny fingers traced the pages as though she was searching for something I couldn't reach. That evening, while I was washing dishes in the kitchen, my mother came in. Naomi, is she still not talking? I shook my head, eyes fixed on the stream of water running down the drain. No. She just sits there, staring out the window. I've tried asking her, but she just shakes her head. My mother sighed, placing a gentle hand on my shoulder. Naomi, you have to help her. She's been through too much for someone her age. I nodded, but inside my heart felt heavy. How could I help Alice when I was drowning in guilt myself? Late that night, I walked into Alice's room. She was already asleep. The soft glow of her bedside lamp cast gentle shadows across her small face, making her look even more fragile. I glanced around the room. The walls were plastered with her drawings, images of the courtroom. Derek's angry face, Alice sitting alone in the corner. I took a deep breath, then gently sat down beside the bed. Alice lay on her side, clutching the blue notebook to her chest like a protective shield. I reached out, softly brushing her soft hair. Alice, I whispered. I'm here. I won't let anyone hurt you again. The next morning, I decided to take Alice to the park nearby. She remained silent, her eyes distant. I tried to keep the mood light. Do you want to go on the swings? Alice shook her head. How about the slide, or maybe some ice cream? Alice kept shaking her head. I sat down on a wooden bench, watching the other children playing. Laughter echoed through the park. But Alice just sat there, staring straight ahead. After a while, I took the blue notebook out of my bag and handed it to Alice. Alice, if you don't feel like talking, you can write it down. Or draw. I won't look if you don't want me to. But I want you to know that I will always listen in whatever way you feel comfortable. Alice didn't respond. She took the notebook, opened to a blank page, and started writing. I sat there, watching each slow, hesitant stroke of her pen. When Alice finished, she closed the notebook and handed it back to me. "Can I read it?" I asked softly. Alice nodded. I opened the notebook. On the page there was only one sentence, written in shaky but clear handwriting. "Am I a bad person for making Daddy not see me anymore?" My heart clenched painfully. I swallowed back tears, took a deep breath, and sat down next to Alice. "Alice, you are not a bad person. You told the truth, and the truth is never wrong." Alice bit her lip, her brown eyes glistening. "But Daddy hates me. He said I was a traitor. He said I ruined the family." I pulled her into my arms, holding her close. "Daddy is saying things that aren't true. You didn't ruin the family, you just protected yourself. And I am so proud of you. So proud." Alice buried her face in my chest, her hot tears soaking through my shirt. I gently rubbed her back, feeling each shaky breath she took. "You can write anything you want in this notebook," I said, my voice trembling. "And I will always be here to read it. I will never leave you alone." Alice looked up at me, her eyes red and swollen. "Mommy, if I don't write it down, will I forget what happened?" I nodded, closing my eyes to keep the tears from falling. "Yes. But you can also write down the good things. The things you want to remember forever. We can write about happy days together, okay?" Alice didn't respond. She just rested her head against my shoulder, her eyes fixed on the children playing on the green grass. I knew the journey ahead would be long and difficult, but at least I had Alice here, in my arms, and I would never let her feel alone again. Outside, the sun was setting behind the tall trees, casting a warm orange glow across the ground. I held Alice tighter, as if letting go would make everything disappear. But I had made up my mind. I wouldn't let Derek's shadow darken her life anymore. Days and weeks passed after the final hearing, and life for Alice and me slowly settled into a new normal, or at least what I tried to create to make her feel that way. Every morning, I made coffee in our small kitchen, listening to the birds outside the window while watching Alice sit at the kitchen table, coloring new drawings. But now, her drawings were no longer filled with dark images of angry faces and closed doors. Alice drew birds flying, heart-shaped clouds, and houses with open windows. "Mummy," Alice looked up at me, her brown eyes bright. "Today I drew you." I put down my coffee cup, walked over to the table and leaned down. In the drawing, Alice had sketched me standing in front of our house, holding her hand. My face in the picture was beaming with a wide smile. "You made me a little chubby," I teased. Alice giggled, a sweet sound I hadn't heard since the day we left the courthouse. That sound lifted a weight off my heart. "You're pretty, Mommy," Alice said, wrapping her arms around me from behind. I knelt down and hugged her tightly. "Thank you, sweet girl. And you're beautiful too." Alice sat back down, picking up her crayons and continuing to color her drawing. I stood up and looked around our small but cozy apartment. There were no more angry shouts, no more signs of Derek, but I knew there were still so many things left unspoken. That night, after Alice had fallen asleep, I sat by the living room window, staring outside. The soft glow of the street lamp cast a faint yellow light on the empty road. I opened the blue notebook, the one Alice used to write down the things she couldn't say out loud. Flipping through the pages, I saw the shaky, childlike handwriting. "Why does Daddy hate Mommy? Am I a bad person for telling the truth? If Mommy cries, can I cry too?" I took a deep breath, feeling my chest tighten. At that moment, my mother walked out of the bedroom, holding a mug of hot tea. "Naomi, you're still up?" I shook my head. "I was just reading what Alice wrote." She sat down beside me, handing me the mug. "She was so brave. And so were you." I looked down, my eyes fixed on the floor. I just don't know if I did the right thing. If I hadn't encouraged Alice to speak the truth, would she have been spared all this pain? My mother placed her hand over mine, her gaze soft but firm. "Naomi, you taught Alice something more valuable than anything else. To always speak the truth, no matter how painful it is. Don't doubt yourself. You did the right thing." I nodded, tears quietly streaming down my cheeks. I just worry that she'll grow up thinking she destroyed her family. My mother squeezed my hand. Alice didn't destroy anything. Derek's lies and control did. And now you're rebuilding your family with truth. That's what matters. I looked into her eyes, feeling like I wasn't alone. The next morning, I decided to take Alice to an art class at the community center nearby. When we walked in, the room was filled with light and the cheerful sounds of children laughing and talking. Alice looked around, her eyes both curious and anxious. "Mommy, I don't know anyone here," Alice whispered, clinging tightly to my hand. I bent down, gently stroking her hair. "It's okay, I'll sit here with you. If you don't want to join, we can go home. But if you want to try, I'll be right here, right beside you." Alice bit her lip, then nodded. "I'll try." I smiled, sitting down on the chair next to Alice. She began selecting colors and started drawing. A while later, the instructor walked by, smiling at Alice. "What are you drawing?" Alice looked down at her drawing. "I am drawing the truth." The instructor raised an eyebrow but kept smiling. "The truth? That's interesting. And what is your truth?" Alice paused, staring at her drawing. "The truth is, sometimes grown-ups lie, and sometimes the truth is hard to say. But I think that saying the truth makes you feel lighter." The instructor nodded, her expression warm and encouraging. "You're absolutely right. The truth can be difficult to say, but it's what makes us stronger." Alice smiled and continued coloring. I sat there, watching her, feeling a small but significant change in her. When the art class ended, Alice held my hand as we walked out of the center. "Mommy," she said softly, "I said the truth. And I feel lighter, but I'm still scared." I bent down, looking into Alice's eyes. "It's okay to be scared. There's nothing wrong with feeling afraid. But every time you speak the truth, you get a little bit stronger. And I will always be here right beside you to help you through it." Alice squeezed my hand, her eyes shining under the afternoon sun. "Mommy, I want to go home and draw another picture about a place where I feel safe." I smiled, leaning down to kiss Alice's forehead. "Then let's go home. And this time, you won't have to draw alone." That night, after Alice fell asleep, I sat alone in the living room, the lamp casting a soft glow over the blank pages in front of me. The notebook lay open, but I didn't know where to start. Memories flooded over me like a raging storm. The image of Derek standing in front of me, his voice low and threatening. "If you dare speak the truth, I will take everything from you." I closed my eyes and took a deep breath. He tried to take Alice. He tried to make me look unstable, but he didn't succeed. I was still here, and so was Alice. I picked up the pen and started writing. To all the women who have ever felt trapped in days and nights like mine. I paused, staring at the words under the lamplight. Each word felt like a needle piercing through me. But I kept going. I used to believe that staying silent would protect myself and my child. I used to believe that if I didn't fight back, if I just kept my head down and endured it, everything would eventually blow over. But the truth is, silence is not a solution. Silence only gives more power to the abuser. And that silence in the end will consume you and your children. Derek once made me believe that I was the unstable one. He told me I wasn't fit to be a mother, that everything wrong with our marriage was my fault. And I believed him. I let him control my mind every hour, every day. I stayed silent because I was afraid. But Alice, my daughter, reminded me that the truth is never wrong. No matter how painful it is, the truth must be spoken. Alice is only 7 years old, but she was brave enough to stand up in court, to face the person she feared the most. And she spoke the truth. She did what I was once too afraid to do. And I realized that if a 7-year-old child can stand up for the truth, then we, as mothers, must do the same. Not just for ourselves, but for the children who have no voice. I know there are women out there sitting in dark rooms, feeling alone and powerless, thinking there's no way out. I've been there. I know what it's like to be isolated, to be threatened, to be manipulated to the point where you don't even recognize yourself anymore. But remember this: the truth is power. The abuser wants us to stay silent. They want us to believe that our voices don't matter, that no one will believe us. But that's just another lie. Our truth matters. Our voices matter. Alice reminded me of that. And today, I write these words not just to remind myself, but to reach out to every mother who is suffering from threats, lies, and fears, like I once did. Remember, our children are watching us. They are learning how to face the world by watching how we face our challenges. If we stay silent, they will think silence is the only way to survive. But if we dare to speak the truth, they will learn to stand up for themselves. And sometimes, all it takes is one child speaking the truth to change the world. Alice changed my world. She helped me see that I am not a victim. I am a mother, and I will not let anyone, not even Derek Churvang, take away my right to live a peaceful life with my daughter. Stand up, speak the truth, because the truth will always win. And you will never have to fight alone. I put the pen down and took a deep breath. The words on the page seemed to glow under the lamplight. Outside the window, a gentle breeze drifted by, carrying the faint scent of jasmine. Behind me, I heard soft footsteps. I turned around and saw Alice standing there, clutching her blue notebook tightly. "Mommy?" she whispered. "What are you writing?" I smiled and motioned for her to come closer. "I'm writing about the truth, and about a little girl who taught me what courage really means." Alice blinked, her eyes fixed on the page. "That little girl is me, right?" I nodded, pulling her into my arms. "Yes. And that little girl made me stronger than I ever thought I could be." Alice closed her eyes and rested her head on my shoulder. "Mommy, I'm not afraid anymore." I kissed the top of her soft hair, feeling the steady rhythm of her heartbeat next to my ear. "Me neither, Alice. Me neither." Outside, the street lamp continued to cast its warm glow across the empty road. Life went on, but this time, Alice and I would no longer live in the shadows. We would live in the light of the truth. The light that Alice so bravely brought into our lives. Naomi's story is a powerful reminder that the truth has the power to break through manipulation and lies. When Naomi decided to speak up and teach her daughter Alice to courageously tell the truth, she regained control over her life and protected her daughter from Derek's emotional abuse. In real life, many women and children are still trapped under the control of manipulators. But like Naomi and Alice, they too can find their voices and rebuild their lives. Lives without fear, filled with truth and peace. What do you think about Naomi and Alice's courageous journey? Does the truth always lead to freedom? Share your thoughts and don't forget to follow the channel for more powerful stories and valuable life lessons about family.